Hello, faithful watchers. Uh, Verity and I are back with our
Hello.
March Patreon stream. I'm Jordan, head of the content department at Hit Point Press.
And I'm Verity, one of the members of the content department, and we're here today to talk to you all about races, which I think are one of Humblewood's great strengths. Because look at all those little critters and birds.
There are a lot of animals in the universe, and Humblewood Humblewood only has animal people in it canonically, and so we need to keep coming up with more and more of them to
Yes.
appease our fans.
Uh,
So yeah.
yeah. So we first just kind of talk about like our like the general philosophy of how we are approaching building animal people for Humblewood, and Humblewood 2. So Jordan, do you have any kind of things you learned or you liked from how you built them out in Humblewood 1?
Well, Humblewood 1, as the story has been told a million times, was inspired by specifically two pieces of art that we saw from Leisha Hannigan that spun off into this whole situation that is Humblewood now, and that was the Pigeon Wizard and what became Riffin, our little owl friend, and when we were choosing what races to put in, we were basically just we went from a very North American kind of angle and thought about the creatures that inhabit the woodsy areas here, but then we also wanted some urban creatures like, I guess a raccoon counts as an urban creature, unfortunately now, and pigeons and doves and stuff like that. Um, but as far, I think paradoxically a little bit, Verity and we were talking about this before, is that you can't really, you can't just look at the wiki entry for an animal and start borrowing the ideas from that. That's good for creating a monster version of that animal in a lot of ways, because most animals are defined by claws and movement and things like this, whereas what we want in our Humblewood races is cultures. Um, we're just like the rest of D&D. We're trying to move away from the idea of species having abilities and think more about the types of how these animal creatures would live and how that would change, their behavior. Obviously, we want some things like the wing flap ability and the glide ability just as a natural thing. It's an expectation that people would have in birds. But as far, yeah, the paradox is that you kind of have to think of them as the animal person first and not go too deep down the rabbit hole or bird hole or weasel hole or whatever, um, on the specifics of the animal. And so a lot of them started from almost how we personified those creatures in our brains. So things like the best example is the pigeon, um, the pigeon race and the raccoon race, the Mapok, because those creatures are memed, memed beyond memed and gift on the internet, quite a bit, and so people have a personality in mind for those types of creatures now, and I think that is a much stronger guiding force than some of the facts about raccoons. The Mapoks, for example, like raccoons are known, like in French, they're raton laveurs, they're called, and it's literally like the little washer, and it's because they clean their food in the river. And that is a super interesting fact about raccoons, but is like an extremely clean trait for a D&D race, like a useful thing? Maybe not. But we know that they love to scrounge through the garbage, and they have got iron stomachs for all kinds of food, for good or for ill, and so things like poison resistance and the scroungecraft ability, that felt like a natural kind of, um, if raccoons turned into people, what things would they carry on in their
Yeah.
lives, right?
What would they care about? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you can see that sense of like culture, and then how it like builds out and out and out from these like first thoughts in a lot of like the later stuff that's been written, like in Humblewood Tales, where it's like, oh, if you are a bird person, and you can glide and you can flap your wings, and like maybe you can't fly fully. Like that's one of the kind of traits of Humblewood, is we're not doing flying people.
That has
Then
two reasoning behind it. One, flight is a thing you have to be careful with.
Yeah.
But second of all, like larger creatures, like a medium-sized thing, requires a wingspan.
Yeah, you're not like
And we can't have the bird folk having albatross
No.
long wings, because it's just.
But then we have like places in Aldahart where it's like, oh, if you have the ability to glide, this very high up area of the Great Tree City doesn't really have the same fear for you as if you're a little like hedge and you're all the way up there. And like, so you have those kind of, from the point of view of the starting with the creature abilities, and then how does that make you view the world? Like that's the thing I really love about the Humblewood races. It's like, if you were an animal but also a person, how would you then interact with the world? Like, say you're an animal that has a really great sense of smell. How does that shape the way that you interact with the world around you? Like, what are you interested in? What are you using that for in your daily life, in your adventures? Are you tracking people? Are you able to easily find hidden things? Like all these kinds of traits. That's what I really like about the blending the animal world and the D&D world, because I think it gives you a sense of like empathy for these creatures. You're just like, oh yeah, I want to imagine myself out of humanness and into something else.
Yeah, if like an animal, if a Humblewood species race has like that good sense of smell, like maybe they don't have street signs in their villages because they just find their way around based on the smell.
Yeah, maybe there's a job that is going and remarking the smell on the equivalent of a street sign. Maybe that's someone's job. You have to be able to sniff your way around. So yeah, there's lots of like considerations for putting it into like a fantasy world, and then specific considerations for putting it into like D&D and 5th edition, because there we've got to balance this against other races, even though Humblewood's kind of a closed ecosystem. And you can definitely take Humblewood races and play with other races and other systems and other locations. We still want them to be kind of roughly balanced. And for us, I think balancing Humblewood 2 to Humblewood 1 is our top priority. And then also just like making sure we're doing something new and interesting with them. So it's not none of the races should feel like this is Humblewood's version of an elf. Like this isn't Humblewood's version of an orc. Like that's not how we want to approach them.
And on that note, also, we need to be careful that we're not reinventing the wheel, because we do want to encourage, like within the Humblewood races that we've already created, because in the end, the pigeon race or the gallus, it covers a wide. It can cover a wide swath of, like, we don't need a quail race because the gallus will cover a lot of that kind of.
Yeah, and that's something
fowl,
that's something we've started doing in like more recent adventures and things. So with the Mapak, we have your kind of classic Humblewood 1 Mapak that looks like a raccoon, and then one of the characters in Panic at the Golden Gala, which was one of the most recent Humblewood tales that went out to Kickstarter backers, I think this month. There is a character who is a Mapak, but she is a red panda. Now you look at a red panda and you look at a raccoon, and they kind of fill a similar ecological niche, and they're also kind of the same shape, even though they're not necessarily related. Like that, to me, doesn't really matter as much. Like the actual scientific classification, not that important. Like, but the kind of what role does this play? And I think we've always really encouraged people to like take the existing races and like mess around with them. Like you want to have a rabbit, just be a big gerbine, like things like that. That said, there is still room for lots more races. The animal kingdom is like stunningly vast and inspiring. Yeah.
Yeah. So to that note,
Mhm.
the reason that we're kind of sitting off to the sides of our cameras, this was done on purpose,
Mhm.
is that we're gonna, for anyone in the chat today, we're gonna pick an animal and kind of brainstorm a Humblewood race, and so you can sort of see and maybe help us with the process a little bit. This isn't necessarily anything that's going to be guaranteed to show up in a Humblewood product in the future or anything like that. And this is just more an exercise to kind of show you how Verity and I and our content team kind of develop something from scratch. And we have we're going to have a document that you can follow
Yeah.
along with, and
If
it's going to
our
be in between us somewhere here, and that's why we're sitting off to the side.
I
Okay.
believe that it's up. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Allie, our wonderful
Somewhere
producer.
somewhere here there's
Somewhere
a
over here.
document. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we put it to we got requested some ideas for we requested some ideas from you fine Patreon folks, and we rounded it down to 3 that you know, if we've got some folks in the chat that want to cast a vote between them. Apparently bears were incredibly popular and very much requested a lot. So
A lot of
one
people
of
wanted
our
bears.
one of our option is bears,
Mhm.
and then option number 2 is penguins,
Mhm.
and option number 3 is moles.
Moles.
And I yeah, just put your number, your choice in the chat, 1, 2, or 3, and then that's the one that we'll work on.
Awesome. We'll give you a little bit of time
Yeah. Do you have
to
do
do
you have your
some
favorites
votes.
from this list, Verity?
Yeah. I mean, I love a penguin. I do love a penguin. I love like a weird bird.
Yeah.
Yeah, like penguins are fun. They're also quite large. Like if you've ever seen an emperor penguin, they're
They can
like,
get pretty
yeah,
big, and they are strong enough to sort of beat each other up quite a bit. So
yeah.
um,
And my mom used to work in the Antarctic sometimes, and she was like, "We don't need to worry about penguins. They're fine. There's so many of them. There's so many penguins."
right.
Yeah, they're very cool.
My vote is for I love moles,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that we don't have a ton of burrowing creatures and stuff yet, and also
Oh,
an
beautiful.
one of the first adventures that I ran, we played a bit of D&D in the office in the early days, and I wrote an adventure for the um, for the team that had moles as the sort of central creature, even though we hadn't made them. So I just reskinned a bunch of Duergar from D&D, but it was a lot of fun to have them in. But bears are an interesting
Bears are
thing
also cool.
because scale is something that we talk a lot about, that we have to consider, because
Mm,
we scaled the bird folk to each other somewhat to the scale that birds are, but that has left us with like 7-foot tall crow people,
yeah, like
and that's a complicated thing to think about.
yeah, like I mean, there are small bears. There's also very, very, very large bears. Do some fun stuff with scale there.
Mhm.
Um,
Sure.
uh, it seems we have a tie. I think Allie is trying to wrangle to
Yeah,
like
we
a
need
final
someone to
answer.
break the
Um,
tie between
come
bear and
on,
mole.
bear versus mole. Okay,
We're
Allie's
doing a
gonna
coin
flip
flip.
a coin.
All right.
Our intrepid producer is keeping us on track. Otherwise, we'll just talk about bears and moles for like the next 40 minutes.
Yeah. All right. Bear wins.
Bear. Okay. It's
Heads. It's
bear.
bear. Okay. All
Hey,
right. yours was penguins. Mine
bears.
was moles, and we're going with bears. But I
Yeah.
think that's democracy in action.
Yes. And like I like bears. Bears are also good.
Oh yeah, they're
Um,
all. I mean, that's
oh,
the
they're all
fun thing,
good.
is they all inspire.
Hmm.
And honestly, bears is such a bears is a classic kind of creature that I think would fit into the first Humblewood
Hmm.
setting immediately. So yeah,
Yeah.
this will be a good experiment.
Okay. So let's scroll on down. Scroll to this lovely template. Ding.
Yeah, if you want to just follow our cursors. Click on our names there, Allie. It should bump you down. Perfect.
Okay, you're scrolled. Excellent. So I don't suggest we start with the name. So I'm just going to put bear folk. We don't use the animal folk name for Humblewood. Like we like to get a bit more funky with them.
Some are inspired by Latin names. Some are inspired by the Gallus. I think is directly.
I think that just means it's like the chicken family name.
Yeah.
And Vulpin is obviously the like kind of. I think it's French is pretty close to that.
And I think vulpine means fox-like. Yeah. So
yeah, we will
cheat a little, but
yeah, we'll come up with a name. Maybe Ursa is there as a basis. So I'll just make a little note of that of some things we can do with bear. But then we see this like template that we this is kind of how we build things out in our Google Docs when we hand things over to the design team and they make them look all beautiful. So you're getting a little sneak at our process.
And obviously it's also dictated by the standards of Dungeons and Dragons. So we need to make sure that we've got the same details there.
So where shall we start? So that it kind of breaks out into two sections. Is what we call like the fluff, which is not prerogative. Like it's good. I love the fluff. Versus the crunch, which is the like game mechanics, the traits. And so I think we should probably start with the traits. That's my thinking. And then as we said, we build out from that into like, how do these people view the world and interact with the world based on the traits that they have?
Yeah. Your rules should influence your lore and your fluff as much as possible. It makes your life a lot easier.
Yeah.
So yeah, I say we scroll down. We scroll down to our racial traits.
Yeah. So the first thing we've got here is the ability score increase. I feel like for bears, there is a fairly obvious one, which is strength.
First of all, I think generally we encourage you to mix and match these any way that you want.
Yeah, we've moved over to this language of like a 2+1 ability score increase, but we want to give some guidance to newer players who are like, I don't understand all this maths, just tell me what to play. And so that's why we have the wording of to play a typical insert creature here, choose these two. So that's just kind of a little bit of guidance and also just to give a sense of like, if this is what is normal, and then maybe I want to play against type for this character. That I find really interesting. It's like if you don't know what the established norms of this kind of whatever you're playing against, you can't play against it. So I think probably like strength feels right for a bear. I think the others we can like maybe discuss a bit more, but I feel like a bear is fairly strong.
Yeah, I think the +2 to strength it makes sense as well.
Yeah.
I guess this is also where we would decide if it has any sub races, right?
Yeah,
so maybe a quick discussion about what just our assumptions about bears. You already made one that they're strong.
I think they're strong.
Yeah.
Maybe we make a little write out little brainstorm of what we think about bears. Let's scroll on down further underneath Subrace. And just put bear brainstorm.
The kind of classic image of the bear is that it is a strong, like parental figure a lot of the time. Like a lot of media portrays them as family animals. And the other thing that makes me think is that they have incredible constitutions because they can they can just survive and live a long time. Asleep, the dream, but and they're also a scavenger animal more than an aggressor a lot of the time, right?
Yeah, and that when there is that aggression, it is in defense of like their cubs. Like that seems like something we could play with, like a defensive kind of thing.
And that makes me think maybe also leaning a little bit
Mhm.
towards wisdom as the other bonus,
Mhm.
because that covers things like survival skills and stuff like that. A lot
Mhm.
of the time, though they are family creatures, they are something that you imagine sort of in the woods
Mhm.
with one or two other bears kind of like keeping to
Yeah.
themselves.
It's like they're not like getting together for a teddy bear's picnic all that
Yeah.
frequently.
It can help to, I find, to think in the terms of like what classes
Mhm.
would be iconic for
Mhm.
a bear. You know, if you were to immediately just take a bear out of the woods and dress them up as one of the classes, right?
I mean, you want to put armor on a bear. Who doesn't want to put
That's
armor
right.
on a bear?
And I mean, like barbarian, for example,
Mhm.
has a subclass already
Mhm.
that has a bear totem. You know, so that comes across as like
Mhm.
that's more the misaligning of the bears' personalities by media, you know, in the same way that sharks are kind of misaligned as violent
Mhm.
creatures. But you want to lean on some of these tropes and ideas because that's sort of again what people would expect. So
Yeah.
strong, aggressive creatures that can get very big.
Mhm.
Some of the bears are like close to megafauna.
Oh yeah, like a
Like a
polar
polar bear.
bear.
Yeah.
Polar bears are really big.
Hmm.
Like, do we mess with size category? Do we dare?
Well, that was that was the other thing.
Mhm.
Can we think of different enough categories of bears that
Yeah.
sub races would be necessary?
Yeah, because you've got like polar bears, grizzly bears. They're kind of in the same kind of zone, right? Like they're that very like aggressive kind of bear.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do have like your more timid bears, your black bears, your my favorite bear, the sloth bear, which are adorable. Highly recommend Google sloth bear. Um, uh, and then like yeah, like smaller, kind of smaller bears around the world. Um, and pandas of course, uh, vegetarian bears, not known for their like aggression, although they will mess you up if you mess with them.
Yeah, pandas don't really want to do much of anything,
No,
and that's fine, you know.
that's okay. You can get behind that.
And
Um,
does honey badger fall under bear?
I think honey badger is a type of mustelid,
Right.
which
Okay.
which
So we'll save that for another day. Yeah.
yeah, don't worry about that. Don't worry about honey
We will
badgers.
not care about the honey badger
Yeah.
for now. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I'm thinking for the purposes of this, I
Mhm.
don't know if there's enough difference in personality, you know, unless we want there to be a cultural type thing. I
Mhm.
mean, like when we
But
were working
that
on
can be covered in like the
the lore,
the
yeah.
lore, right? Like the bears in this
Or
place or the bears in this place.
if they have a choice of, say, proficiencies, you know, we can kind
Hmm.
of hint at that. Like you could choose to be proficient in this
Hmm.
or something to kind of indicate. Yeah. Because like when we were talking about the cats, for example,
Hmm.
the Allurans, it was a very clear that we wanted some of their sort of cute, smaller kind of
Guys.
house cat things because we knew people would want to play smaller cats. But then we also wanted to make sure that large, big cats, lions, and cougars and stuff are covered as well.
Mhm.
But that doesn't immediately jump out at me here. There's nothing I think fundamentally different personality-wise between a polar bear and a brown bear or black bear that we would really want.
Yeah, it's I mean, there all I know having moved to Canada is that if you see a black bear, maybe you're gonna be okay. And if you see a grizzly bear, maybe you're not. Um, like
Yeah,
or brown bear, like who knows?
yeah.
But yeah, I don't see like I pulled up a list of bears. I'm looking at the list of bears. They tend to kind of they kind of worked out what works, which is be a bear, and evolution seems to have said, "Good job,
Yeah.
continue being a bear." Yeah, they're
I think for our purposes, just
this is
leaning
just
into that
one.
classic kind of brown bear, black bear kind of vibe,
Hmm.
and then
And
people can reskin and
yeah, like if you want to give your bear a swim speed and say they're a polar bear, cool.
yeah,
But I don't think we need to make a whole separate polar bear race.
yeah. I think that
Um,
makes sense.
yeah. Okay. So, uh, we decided we're just going to have one race. No subrace. Cool.
So I'm going to pull up the Vulpin to just use as an example on my end, so that we're making sure that we have a suitable number of abilities and such.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, there's some, if we scroll back up to race traits, or like kind of hover in between, I don't know if that's possible, but like up here, there's a few of these which are fairly easy to knock off. Like speed, I don't think a bear, like bears are pretty fast, right? Like we're not gonna win a foot race with a bear, but in terms of like comparison to other animals, I don't think of them as particularly fast.
No,
so
I could imagine a sprint ability or something for them, because they tend to be very fast over a short distance.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I think their base speed is 30 foot. That's like a pretty nice, easy one. Languages, if we say that they have their own language, then that'll just be their name. We don't need to worry too much about that. And they are, because it's Humblewood, they're humanoid, even though they're bear.
Another thing we can probably lock in is their size, but I think allowing small or medium really doesn't hinder one way or another. If you want to be a little bear, a
little Winnie the Pooh bear,
I feel like we would be depriving a lot of people of things if we train.
So counterpoint, we say medium or large. Like being a large character is kind of the forbidden fruit, right?
It would be the you'd be the only one in Humblewood, but
yeah.
I feel I agree that large races should exist in D&D, but it does change things considerably. Because if you're a large creature moving through, say, Alderheart, and this is one of those considerations that we have to make when we add something like this to the game. But let's do it.
Okay.
Let's
I would say medium or large.
Ogre-sized race, potentially.
Yeah. And this is something we would want to playtest. Like we would want to take it and playtest it. And this is why we could
share a PDF of this or something.
Oh yeah, we can
with folks afterwards.
Yeah, like if we got a load of feedback saying like we hate the fact that this bear is large, then we would kind of take a look at that. Because like to me, when I think bear, I think big. Like that is, and unless we find, like we might, as we go through this, find another way that we can express that sense of size. But a lot of the like standard ways of expressing size, like, oh, your carrying capacity, it goes up, I'm like, that doesn't really kind of give me the right vibe, I don't think.
Yeah, it is also true. Kitsumara in the chat mentions that some creatures can be up to 7 feet tall and are still considered medium, and we do that with some of our large bird folk, and the servants as well.
Yeah, the servants, like plus antlers, like that's you get up there.
This is a thought experiment, and we have to start somewhere. So I think that the idea of a large bear race, I think, is interesting. So I say move ahead with that for now.
Yeah. Okay. We'll mess around with this. So from our little brainstorm, are there any like things that leap out to you as something you'd want to like express in a trait?
I think, and it was echoed as in the chat by the milkman here, I think a protective ability does make sense, because like the first thing that comes to your mind is mother bear getting between her cubs and you. And so I think, maybe not as powerful as the sentinel feat, but something along that lines of like, and this is a product of, it could be interesting if it was if it worked on only things that were smaller than you, which would lean into that large scale. It would give you a more, if you were large, you could protect medium and small creatures. But if you're only medium, you can only protect small creatures. I don't know if that's limiting. Maybe your size and smaller. Your size or smaller. Yeah.
So I'll just write that in. And like in terms of the actual like how this protection works, there's a couple of like levers we can play with. Obviously, advantage and disadvantage, and also like negating damage. Like hit comes in, you soak some of the damage. Either you remove it or you take it on yourself. What other ways are there to do a protect?
Sorry, did you mention armor class?
Oh no, yeah.
Temporary armor, like giving an armor class, like that's something.
Yeah. So
that other direction we could go in is to have it be a little bit more, like if you've got a bear on your side, you'd feel pretty tough. So perhaps perhaps bonuses to something like the paladin's aura to your saving throws, like strength saving throws, because the bear is near. You are also feeling strong. Which makes me think of maybe like protection against being frightened as well. That could be really interesting.
Yeah, I think like intimidation and frighteningness seem like the other side of that. Like that's a nice like if we lean into kind of protecting, and then also but by being scary, maybe that's another trait where it's like if you make a contested intimidation check, you can impose frightened. They might have to limit that to like a certain number of times a day kind of thing, but that like big old bear roaring at you, you're going to be pretty freaked out.
Yeah, a roar definitely makes sense. We're getting it. We're leaning on a lot of physical kind of aspects to them, which is good. I mean, the bear is so evocative when it comes to that, but we also want to think about some of those kind of cultural type traits. So things that come to mind is rest, something tied to resting. I think would be super interesting.
Yeah, it's like because in the rest mechanics, we've got like short rests and long rests. Hibernation is not really like
yeah,
so
that's
we're
an extra
taking
long
hibernation
rest.
Yeah,
but if we just sort of extrapolate it down to them being good sleepers, you know, that's kind of a fun thing. And it could be it could be something centered around hit dice being more effective. You know,
I think I've used that in one of the races that's coming up tomorrow, which is because hummingbirds also have the ability to like briefly kind of shut themselves down to like replenish
quickly.
replenish their energy. And so I've kind of played with that mechanic of short rests and improving your hit dice. Like basically you get advantage on your hit dice, I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Yeah, the chill out trait, yes.
Yeah.
Just real chill.
So proficiencies are one thing that we can also leverage,
Yeah. So for the proficiencies, I always feel like this is kind of another philosophical thing, right? And like where we're deciding to put things. For me, I actually like separating out especially the kind of like learned proficiencies, like your history and your arcana and things like that, out of races, because I don't think there's anything about like your physical being that makes you particularly good at like history. And for me, that is cultural, and like that feels much more like it should come from backgrounds like in the game, rather than being like all of you like bear folk, you all really loved history and so you all get proficiency in history. Like for me, that's where I want that kind of culture to live, and not like just because you are this type of person you are good at this type of thing. And I prefer the like slightly closer to the looking at animals and how they're actually working, to and then leaving the culture up to like other sections of the like building out the character. That said, I think there are some, like if you look at the list of skills, there are some on there which do lend themselves to being like innate, like perception and stealth. Like those kinds of skills are a little bit more you can see that being tied to your nature.
I think the intimidation
does
like, fit here as well.
Yeah.
It straddles the line between being that they're just naturally intimidating, but also that the other peoples of Humblewood are intimidated by them. You know what I mean? It's because they are the largest. We're putting them into the larger category than the idea that a bear coming around.
It's kind of like, that's like you're almost intimidating without trying, even if you're trying to be not intimidating.
And that's something that we could put into the fluff, is that a lot of bears are they're trying to. They almost have to walk on eggshells a little bit when they come around other bird folk and humble folk, because just the idea of being so big is,
big.
We don't have predator races or anything.
No, they're not.
They're inspired by those things.
Yeah, people aren't eating each other in Humblewood.
No,
no,
not officially. But but certainly the idea of that, I think, is still ingrained in in the minds of some of the creatures.
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like, did you find how many traits there are on the Vulpin? And
the Vulpin has it has a bite attack, which something to consider. A claw or bite attack for a bear makes sense.
Like claw.
Then it has evasive, and then bewitching guile, which is a set of spells. So it has 3. It's got Darkvision, so it's up to us if we include that. I don't know about bear's eyesight.
I'm like, this is the thing with animals. It's like most of them are better than us at seeing in the dark, and so Darkvision just becomes a kind of a bit odd. Like, you just don't want to slap Darkvision on everything.
Their night vision is excellent.
Yeah.
And they are particularly attuned to detecting movement.
Okay.
So likely they're going to. Apparently, it's a myth that they have poor eyesight.
Yeah.
They see in color. So there you go.
That's cool. Bear art. What does bear art look like? I like Kitsumara's idea that they can be gentle giants. Like that sounds like, if I see a bear and like thinking about playing a character that's a bear, having that kind of archetype would be quite fun to play with. Like, you don't want to piss them off, but they're trying not to step on you, tiny mouse person.
They're incredibly fast. They can run more than 60 kilometers an hour.
Yeah. It's like most animals are really cool.
Yeah.
And they're
so hard to pick things. But it sounds like Darkvision makes sense, and like, I guess and maybe, I also think about bears being really good at sniffing things out.
Yeah, we've kind of covered that a lot with the aforementioned gonna be happening in a few months, one of those races. Like, we've kind of given sniffing things out to someone else. Sure. Although I think it's currently a spell, so which we're giving them. So
well, maybe it's something that we consider as a feat as well.
Yeah.
Something that will enhance your senses to kind of indicate that you're of the type of creature that is a little better at it. But Darkvision, and then we want to get a physical attack in.
Yeah, I think it's like a big claw, big backing claw.
And I might think we do 2 dice for it. One of the things that people tend to avoid with large creatures and stuff is that weapons that are larger do an extra die of damage when wielded by that thing. So a bear wielding an axe, a great axe or whatever, is doing 2d12 with it as opposed to 1d12 damage. And that's one of the reasons they don't.
They don't make large creatures. Yeah.
Apart from every doorway not fitting them. that kind of
and
stuff.
squeezing into various situations. Yeah, so maybe that's something. Maybe we don't let them be large creatures in that sense, but we do give them that 2D whatever die in order to express for their claw attack. And you could also say like, oh, okay, like you have a certain number of times a day you can add an extra dice to an attack, a melee attack, to kind of represent that as well.
Mm-hmm. Sort of a more aggressive stance or frenzy almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna start typing up some
Sebastian's
stuff.
talking about how they would have to drive to outrun a bear, and I'm just imagining you driving through the woods in a car, and I mean that's really strange.
It's gonna end badly.
Yeah, it's kind of on you at that point if you've driven your car all the way into the woods. Okay, so I would really like. I think an intimidation skill. Well, I think intimidation proficiency.
Yeah, and I want
think
to.
it's enough of a nod toward it. I like leaning on the protective ability and the resting ability, because I think those play with some. The rest in particular plays with some fun. First of all, there's probably a punny name that we can use, which is always good.
Yeah.
The puns guide us regularly.
Yeah.
But also it's just like, as long as it doesn't step on the toes of the other restful ability, I guess.
What if the protective ability is tied to being intimidating? And so it's like when someone is targeting your ally with an attack and you're there, and maybe you don't even have to be right there. You can make a intimidation check against them. Could be contested. It's like you've got to set that DC somehow.
Contested against
contested against their like a charisma save or something.
It could be as a reaction to their attack roll, and then it's
exactly,
an intimidation against their attack. So
if against their what they rolled on the attack.
Yeah,
and then you can it can either force a reroll or force a miss.
I like the idea that it frightens the person until the end of your next turn or something like that.
Yeah.
You make a roar louder than that is scarier than their attack. I think that's really fun.
So when a creature other than you is melee attack, or I think it's got to like the range of this is also the issue, right? Like most protective abilities require you to be within 5 feet. We could make this because of roar, you're not necessarily like you don't roaring directly into someone's face is very scary, but roaring 15 feet away also very scary.
What if it's disruptive? So they make their attack roll before you determine whether it hits or misses. You use your reaction to roar and make an intimidation roll. If that intimidation roll is higher than their attack roll, then they are forced to re-roll and use the new result.
Yeah, I like that.
Number of times a day equal to your proficiency bonus.
Yeah, I like that for like have it in the sorry, my brain is just I'm trying to type. Yeah, it's just trying to type and think at the same time. Yeah, interrupting something, and then do we want frightened on that as well or no? That's the question, because at the moment it's just like re-roll.
If it could be like if they fail the roll, they're also frightened. If they still fail the roll, they become frightened as well, and that just like seals the whole.
Yeah.
Like a big philosophy that we have is like, what does this look like in the story of the table, right? Like we have plans for many Humblewood books into the future, and that means a lot of new races, and so everything that we're adding in has to like inspire some kind of fun thing. And for me, the visual of a person like swinging a sword and then the bear yelling at them, and them just being so shaken that they basically have to redo the attack, and then if they fail that attack, they are scared of the bear because they're like,
Mhm.
wow,
I'm looking
this
out for
hand
that.
just yelled me into
Yeah.
missing. You
Yeah.
know, that's a pretty potent thing. So that's a lot of fun, I think. And I really like the recent move to number of times equal to your proficiency bonus that a lot of things have been doing.
It feels
It's so
nice
clean.
for
It levels. It
Mhm.
means your race levels up with you a little bit as you level up. So
yeah, I like that a lot. The attacker must re-roll and use the second attack.
oh, it's targeting with a melee attack. I think that it could be any attack.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's more like if you're casting a spell, you're still going to get freaked out if a bear hits you.
Yeah, I think that's actually very interesting. Is that if it works on like firebolt, you know, and you kind of the idea that if someone's cocked an arrow and is like the bear's like you know.
Yeah. Until the end of turn. Yeah. When a creature other than you within 20 feet of you, I think there's probably a smoother way of writing that.
This is a brainstorm session.
Yeah, this is targeted with an attack. You can use your reaction to roar, making intimidation check contested by the attack roll. If you succeed, the attacker must re-roll and use the new result. If the second attack misses, the attacker becomes frightened of you until the end of its next turn. You can
until the end of your next turn.
That might be that's less effective if depending on where you are in the initiative order.
It gives you one turn,
right, to do something.
Against them. That's the That's the main thing. Because if their turn comes up next,
it's they're attacking. This is on their reaction. It's your reaction to their turn. So this gives you a full round. Whereas if it's on to the end of your turn, you might be next. Like
frightened affects the person, not people going after it. Like the source of the frightening doesn't.
Yeah, I am frightened of the bear. The bear is not frightening. I mean, the bear is frightening me, but I'm frightened.
That means its next turn and any other attacks it makes on this turn.
Yeah, like all the way through until you could say to the start of its next turn.
No,
if you wanted to.
I think the end of its next turn means that it's got one whole turn of frightened. So you're setting up the next turn to be at disadvantage.
Yeah. Cool. I like that. I feel like we've like that's a fun ability. Big roar. I feel like that's the capstone part of this race, right? This is why you pick this.
It's very evocative of what people think of bears in both fiction and in real life. You know, so it's perfect.
And it ties in with we give you the free proficiency in intimidation, so you're not gonna be bad at it. Yeah.
Because it's tied to charisma, right? And so
so if you're this is a paladin, right? This bear is a paladin. You could make such a great paladin
of nature's paladin.
Awesome.
And then we were thinking about we've got our claw attack. Something else you could mess around with is they are stronger against larger creatures because they are able to take on larger creatures better. That's a way we could represent their size a little more.
Yeah, because in real life, there aren't actually that many things larger than a bear that bears are encountering on a regular basis.
What if they've got the ability to grapple something that is a size larger than them?
Yeah.
What is it? Grappling? You can grapple something that's up to a size larger?
I think so.
Okay, so maybe up to 2 sizes larger?
Yeah. Let's double check.
That might not. That's a little situational. And it also one thing you don't want is for the race to
force you into one
or really lean into into a build, a certain build.
You could build a perfect paladin bear by giving it all the things that work perfectly with a paladin. But then it's like, what if I want to be a paladin, a bear wizard? What if I want to be a bear bard? Like a bard, a baird? Yeah.
A baird.
A baird.
Yeah.
Those should all be functional as well. And I think with the protective ability, we've really got the kind of that sense of protection and paladininess.
As a last thing, is there something that we can come up with for the sleeping thing?
Yeah.
Thing?
What's the resting thing?
The other idea is if it's because they also all sleep together. So
what if you can share your hit dice? What if you can like spend a hit die to like give like
bear hug?
A bear hug. Yeah, like a more like nurturing, caring kind of sense where it's like, oh, we're all taking a rest. You're at a hit die. Like let me give you one of mine, or not even out of it. Like I'm a barbarian. I have a giant chunky hit die. Let me spend it on you.
Yeah, and maybe it's something like a Snorlaxy kind of vibe. It's like if you're sleeping near a bear, you sleep better. You sleep better.
Yeah. Like you're because hit dice come into play in short rests, right? Like if we want it to be sleep, then it's like what that kind of plays on long rests. So
if we just played up they're a good sleeper and that they like they tend to like short nap. I know that's different from but the idea is like they often will just sort of lean up against a tree and have a nap. They can fall asleep under any circumstances, you know. And that means that sort of like they take a nap while everyone else is having their short rest, and they can kind of like exude restfulness to everybody. That's really nice. That's a really sweet image.
Yeah.
Everyone snuggled up with their bear
just
friend.
Like cozy with the bear.
And just bear, like bear snug instead of bear hug.
Bear snug, yeah.
Chat's digging the sharing dice with a bear hug thing. Well, that's great.
Bear snug. Yeah, I like that. I don't think I've seen that done. I mean, it probably has. Most things have, but I don't think I've like.
Certainly not within the Humblewood's Rogues Gallery. So I think that it makes it, and that's a pretty potent thing. Because you're right. Like if people are going to lean towards warriors and warrior types and barbarians, barbarians. Barbarians. Anyway, and being able to heal someone a D12 with one of your hit dice, especially if you're not going to use them, it's I like that a lot.
You can spend I think you probably want to limit it to like a hit die, or like one of your hit die. Because you're not like I'm magically pumping like 20 D12 into someone at level 20.
It could be per person, per character, like creature.
Yeah.
So that if you really wanted to, because it becomes a hindrance to you if you it has a natural balance to it because you know. But I think if you've got 4 hit dice and 4 allies, I think you should be able to use one on each. You only get half of them back after a long rest. So you have to keep that in mind.
You're balancing it, like you're kind of taking care of, like it almost gives a sense of like, you guys you guys sleep next to me, I'm all warm and cozy, and I'll look out for danger. That's kind of the vibe, right?
Yeah. Putting yourself ahead of them. It plays into that protective angle too.
Yeah. So when you take a short rest, you can spend one of your hit die to heal another willing creature.
You can do this once for
the target
ally
regains 2.
The problem with the barbarian pun, Victoria, is that you're still pronouncing it the same way. It only works in writing. A barbarian is a pun you can hear. Victoria also mentioned the moose, wanting a moose Humblewood race, and if you look in the art of Humblewood 1, we certainly depict some servants as moose. As Canadians, it's an obligation.
Yeah.
But
I feel like that's the big lesson that I learned in Canada, is that no one seems afraid of bears. Everyone is quite afraid of moose.
a moose will ruin your day.
Yeah, a moose. A moose will take you out and chase you down.
Well, they're megafauna. They're some of the world's only land-based megafauna that's still around, and so you have to respect them. And we are talking a lot about what large and huge creatures are like in Humblewood while we're working on Humblewood 2, since we're going to some more remote spaces and stuff. And so I think megafauna are going to play a bigger role in the ecology of Humblewood.
Yeah, Humblewood giants.
Yeah,
I love a megafauna, and especially like a prehistoric megafauna, like the cave bear. That's a cool bear.
They instantly have a mythical quality to them, right?
The Glyptodon, that guy, cool giant armadillo. Oh, wonderful. The Irish elk. Oh, wonderful. Okay. So yeah, we've got a pretty good start here.
I think we'll noodle with this, and then maybe we'll release a little one, little rough PDF to everyone to try out.
Yeah, just so you know, this is not going to go into Humblewood 2 unless things change wildly. We've actually planned out all the races that we're going to have in Humblewood 2. But who knows? Future Humblewood book, maybe bear. Maybe.
Yeah, and it's also a reminder that you can make up your own stuff fairly easily. You know, Verity and I do this for a living, and we make a lot of considerations about things. But you know, don't be afraid to add things to your own world. So, but yeah, I think it'd be cool for us to share this with folks and say, hey, we did this in the stream. Come and hang out. We'll do more of things. If you like this, definitely let us know. Because it's really fun to make things with folks. So
yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I love the idea of dire squirrels. I really hope that you do, because that sounds magnificent.
A dire squirrel sounds terrifying.
If a regular squirrel can cause as much trouble as they cause, how much trouble can a dire squirrel cause?
Yep. So thank you everybody for hanging out with us and chatting about bears. And I hope this was fun and interesting for everyone. Certainly I enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, this is what it's like to be on a call with Verity and I when we're brainstorming some ideas. All right.
Okay.
So we are we're gonna wrap up, I think, for now. It's almost 4 o'clock. But
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for it's hard to say. It's so hard to say goodbye. Everyone, have a great rest of your week and a happy Easter, and we'll see you all soon.